It's been a week since the tragic shooting in Newtown, and a lot of us still have unanswered questions on how to cope. Joining me is Dr. Keith Canner with answers to questions our viewers have submitted throughout the day. Welcome back to Primetime.
Hey Taylor, it's been a tough week, I think, for everybody, really. This is a national tragedy that's brought lots of questions and concerns for everybody, especially parents and kids.
And with the holidays here,
it's a tough timing.
it's like, oh, so sad. So let me ask you some of the questions that have been submitted. Our first question is, what are some signs you should pay attention to if you think your kid might have social issues?
Well, the first question that you want to look for is, does your child have friends? Friendship making and social for kids is a very, very important developmental marker that we look for to determine if a child is really doing well enough to socially interact. So if they don't have friends, that's a sign. If they tend to isolate themselves and they don't really feel like interacting with other people, that's a sign. You know, you look for kids who are sullen and eat lunch by themselves, don't do a lot of things, don't join a lot of groups. These are kind of kids who are having just a difficult time. Just like, on the other hand, if you have kids who are too hyper or hyperactive. So the idea is to alert that if you see something that's going on, go to them and try to help. I mean, that's the idea here, is early on, you want to go to them and try to help them.
Those kind of kids, are they suffering from anxiety, like social anxiety, or are they...
Well, it's hard to know because every case is a little
who knows?
different. But if you have a withdrawn child, it can be lots of things. It can be their personality. It can be that they're just having a tough day. They could be acutely upset with something. So you don't want to diagnose somebody, but you're looking for signs that adults and children should know. Like, what do you look for in somebody?
What about angry kids? I remember when I was a kid, there was a kid in my class that was just angry all the time.
Well, here's the thing.
You know, throwing stuff and just, I don't know if that's a learned behavior from his parent or if that's just a sign that there's something wrong.
Well, wherever it's coming from, you know, you're seeing that it's something that wouldn't be considered typical or normal, right? So it's, when you look for something and you see something that doesn't look right, that's the question that you kind of go, hey, maybe that person is having a tough time. And the idea is to go to them. You see, when we look at some of the profiles of some of the school shooters that we've had, there's a lot of likenesses about them. Socially awkward. A lot of them got bullied. A lot of them really didn't have any activities that they did really outside of just very sedentary types of things. And these are things that are in people's histories, and if you pay attention enough to it and you go to them to try to help them, be friendly to them, a lot of times, you know, that really does pull people out.
Yeah,
it's important.
I can see why.
Yeah.
Here's another question. How do you prevent school shootings?
Well,
do you have the answer to that?
Well, acutely, it's like I was thinking of a Band-Aid versus a cure. You know, in the Band-Aid, we have to do a better job of controlling, guns. I mean, we really have to be careful and making sure that kids aren't exposed to things that are too stimulating for them, because that can cause problems.
Like video games?
Well, that's a good question. And, we have all the research indicating that TV violence causes aggression in children. Well, the video games, guess what? I'm sure that the studies are going to come out. They're going to show, look, these games cause aggression in kids because TV does, and if you play too much and your personality is one where you've got some trouble controlling yourself, okay, that could be a problem. But we're getting back to prevention. How do you really stop school shooting? Is you go back to the basics and you really get people early on. Peers, I think peers, because peers see this right away. How to determine if somebody's having a difficult time starting in kindergarten and encouraging kids to go to those people and invite them to play. Don't tease them, really be nice to them. And if you start that early, you pull people out of conditions, and oftentimes that really saves lives.
What about, they said this kid, had a form of autism, or he was Asperger's, right?
Well, see, but this is where you got to be very careful. And I felt when that happened, I mean, that's like saying that every person with a diagnosis could be this. It's not true. And the autistic spectrum of things, these are what we call, descriptive diagnoses, which means that if somebody has a certain amount of symptoms, this is what happens. It doesn't tell you anything about cause. And no, you can't say that autistic children...
what I'm saying is, if a person has some kind of syndrome, even pulling them out might not be enough, because from what I understood, psychosis, some sort of psychosis, has to be combined with Asperger's or whatever else.
Lots of different ways to think about it, but a good point, that if you can't pull them out normally, then the idea is get some help. Look, we've been trying to invite so-and-so to come, and then you go to a teacher and say, hey, we're having a tough time, maybe you can help.
And kids need to talk to their teachers.
Kids need to feel comfortable talking to whoever they feel comfortable talking to. Teacher, parent, friends, but kids got to talk. It's very, very important. It helps.
Some kids just don't. Some kids suppress everything.
And that's,
even
that's a
Even
signal.
in my own home, I will tell you, I have a daughter who doesn't have a feeling without sharing it. She's a talker, and she's about sharing everything. And then I have one daughter, I have to pull information out of her.
Well, part of that's temperament too.
Yeah.
You have to look at that too. But at least you try.
Oh yeah, I don't give
You gotta
up.
try.
She
Don't give
doesn't
up.
win on me.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. What should I say to my kid if he or she is afraid to go to school because of last week's shooting?
Well, you know, it's very common, and we've seen a lot of fears as far away as here. I got lots of calls last week from school districts saying, how do we get the kids to feel more comfortable? The most important thing is you assure them that they're safe. Okay, and when something like this happens, the schools do a very, very good job of making sure that their lockdown system is in place, and you're sharing with the kids that, hey, it's going to be safe, school is taking care of things, we're protecting you, so protection is first. Secondly, you also have to explain to kids that even though this was a terrible tragedy, the likelihood of this happening again is very, very infrequent. I mean, it is. I mean, we've had them, but if you compare them to things like plane crashes and other things, it's still less likely.
Yeah, but to them it brings it home because it's at school where they spend most of their day.
Right, but that's why you have to logically
Yeah.
say, we're going to protect you and the likelihood. And then the most important thing is you got to get them to school, even if they're like pulling to go, so they can see that they successfully made it through the
gotta
day.
Get
You
over
got to get
that.
over the hurdle.
Yeah.
It's really important.
I think we have time for one last question, okay? Should I be concerned if my son plays video games more often than usual?
Well, here's a good question. It gets back to the question you were asking. Video games and kids, you have to be very careful. If a child plays too many stimulating games, we see that they get overstimulated, okay? And if you have a child whose temperament is one that they have a difficult time, like, controlling themselves, and you let them play, it could turn into something more. So parents have to be very careful to know your own child and decide what you're willing to and willing not to do. Watch their
Do
behavior.
you find more boys are into the video games than girls?
Yeah, well, especially, it depends on the types of the
Yeah.
games, the kind of the Call of Duty types games. Yeah, it tends to be much more kind of, boisterous and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are a lot of online games that girls play and a lot of stuff on their, on their phones too. Yeah.
I wouldn't know. 4 daughters. What
Yeah,
do I
you
know
would know.
about
You
boys?
know that. Oh, boys, yeah. Well,
Well,
you
my
talk
daughters
to a
just are
colleague.
really
Yeah.
They're doing Wii and
They're-
dancing and singing. I don't know.
That's nicer. That's,
It is
we're
nice.
to Call
I
of
have a
Duty
nice
and
home, I
Halo.
gotta tell you.
It's nice. Okay, I like that.
All
I like
right,
that.
so hopefully you're going to be a regular
Yes,
here on our show.
I will be here.
And,
Your family matters. Yeah.
we want to tell the viewers, please send in
Yeah,
your
send in your
questions
questions.
for Dr.
Do it.
Canner because
Yeah.
he'll
Answer 'em
answer
here.
them here on Primetime.
We will. That'd be great.
We
Look
got to
forward
keep
to
our
it.
families healthy and happy, especially
Family
our
matters.
children.
Always
Family
does.
matters.
It does.
All right, thank you so
My
much.
pleasure. Good to
And
see you.
happy holidays.
Hey, same to you.